بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمد ونصلي على رسول الكريم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah, we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask him to send peace and blessings on his beloved and our beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. We're in the middle of the chapter of the timings of Salat. The narrations are hadiths on the timings of Salat. So the first narration, Imam Malik narrated from his uncle Abu Suhail, the son of Malik. So what does that mean? Malik narrated from his uncle Abu Suhail, the son of Malik, meaning Imam Malik's grandfather was also called Malik as well, right? So and he narrated from his father that Umar ibn Khattab, Abu Suhail, the son of Malik, narrated from his father, which is Malik, right? That Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu wrote to Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, he was one of the governors, one of the senior Sahaba, ulama, the Sahaba were also governors, and that to pray Zuhr when the sun has declined, to pray Asr when the sun is still very bright and clear in the bright and white and clear in the sky, before it becomes yellow. Meaning should be delayed till very late, should be prayed as early as possible. And Maghrib when the sun sets, when the sun sets, and delay Isha as long as you don't fall asleep. Meaning it should be before you sleep. You should delay it, but if you're going to delay it so much that you're going to be falling asleep. And the Fajr should be prayed when the stars are clear they're still in the sky, and you should read two surahs, long surahs, mufassal, parts of the Quran. Longest surahs should be read in Fajr. Imam Malik narrated from Yazid bin Ziyad, who narrated from Abdullah bin Rafi', the freed slave of Salama, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he asked Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu about the time of Salat. Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu said, I will inform you of it. Pray Dhuhr when your shadow is like your length. Your height. So your shadow is as long as your height. There's an interpretation given this, either this means that till the time of Asr time, or that if you think about it, at Zuhr time, especially, there's generally some shadow is there, depending where you are in the world. Then if you pray a little bit later than the actual time, and this is an indication towards praying later in summer, which the riwayat will come later on. Because if you're going to pray whatever is at Zuhr plus the shadow, that's Asr time then. So it doesn't make sense. It means that Zuhr is to be delayed somewhat, and to pray Asr when the shadow is two lengths, and pray Maghrib when the sun has set, and Isha between that, meaning the Maghrib time, and between what is a third of the night. So Isha actually should be delayed, So and up to a third of the night, So this is and pray morning Fajr when it's still very dark. Pray Fajr Salat when it's still very dark. Imam Malik is narrated. So Shah Waliullah explains this. When he says mithluka, the shadow is your length for Zuhr time, right? Because at Zuhr the shadow is like this long here in Australia anyway. Like you have a shadow right at midday. There's some shadow because the sun is that's east, that's west. When the sun it goes across the horizon like that. Now it's summer, it's more higher up, hence a longer day, and then in winter it's a lower under. If you look at even a midday, it's quite like it's not right up, it's close up, it's actually lower down across. So then you got to have significant shadow at Zuhr time still. So if you were to have a shadow your length, that means it's probably like, in our case, it's probably like something like 1 o'clock maybe in the current days. So to pray, of course, it comes under the ruling which Shah Waliullah says is coming, as I explained before, to do with summer. In summer, the recommendation is to pray Dhuhr late, is to pray Dhuhr to let it cool down so people can come and there's explanations of that. Because it's difficult. In old days, people have to come, they're not in air-conditioned cars like we are. They have to walk at a distance in the heat of the sun. And if anybody's been in the Middle East now, you'll know, or even in Pakistan, in India, and it's like 45, 50 degrees, 50 Celsius. So if you delay the Dhuhr, like in summer, like for example, in our summer, Zuhr is 1 to 1:30 approximately between this time, and and the Asr is 5:15, 5:20, 5:30 roughly. So there's a 4-hour Like you got 4 hours for dhuhr. So if you to delay your dhuhr to another hour and a half or so let everything sort of cool down, the peak, especially in those countries, is probably more so. But here it doesn't get that hot. But to cool it down for the people. So this is what he means by, he said, Shah Waliullah is saying that when he's saying that pray dhuhr at the shadows, meaning that it should not be prayed right at the beginning time in the heat of the sun, as corroborated by other narrations. Imam Malik narrated from Yahya bin Sa'id who narrated from Amrata bin the daughter of the Rahman, who narrated from Aisha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that she said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he prayed the Fajr, the morning, the woman used to leave that, and you cannot recognize them, you cannot make them out due to the darkness. So remember, there's no street lights, right? There's no outside lights. There's no lights. They're praying in the dark, right? There's a narration I was reading, and that was hundreds of years later. I mean, literally till 100, 200 years ago, or till when electricity became common, people prayed in the dark. Maybe put a lamp or a candle. When it went out, it went out. You know, it went out. That's like, you just pray in the dark. We're talking about a tawaf. Junayd Baghdadi Rahmatullah was doing a tawaf, and he heard someone say something, and he thought it was incorrect, but he couldn't make out who it was. It was in the dark. They were doing tawaf in the dark. There's no one there. There's no lights. It's pitch black. So if they said that when we finish the salat, remember in the Prophet's mosque, for 9 years, if I remember correctly, there's 9 years, the first 9 years, right until the end, there was no lamp. He said we used to get the ends of date palms, and we used to light them, and then they used to extinguish, then it used to be pitch black. Like the light used to extinguish. So just think about, like now we got all these lights, mashallah. But in that time, so when the sahabiyat, when they prayed, the nisa, the women of that time, when they prayed, when they left, it was when they left and someone saw them, and the way that they were wrapped up, they were covered up, that he said you wouldn't be able to you don't know you can't see them, you can't recognize them. So this is so meaning that it was so dark that you could not recognize them. Imam Malik narrated from Ibn Shihab that he narrated from Urwa, and he said to Sayyidina, his auntie, Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, narrated that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray Asr, and the sun was in her room, right? So the sunlight was in the room. Now what does that mean? Like, what is sunlight? Meaning that the sun was very high up and very bright, that when the light entered into, of course there's the many factors, where's the window, how high is the window, and so forth, but generally understand that it was very high up, that it lit up the whole room, meaning that Asr was not prayed late, very late. There's other narrations that will clarify this. Imam Malik narrated from Ishaq bin Abdullah bin Abi Talha, from Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, that he said we used to pray Asr, then someone used to go from here to Bani Amr bin Auf, and he will find them that they're praying the Asr, and that place was how far? 2 miles from Medina. It's in Medina now, like the whole mosque, Masjid Nabawi itself is now like the whole city of Medina. Used to be a small town, right? A village or a town in our understanding of village or town. So that's about 2 miles away. It's about 3.5 kilometers away. So he said, so someone used to pray in Masjid Nabawi with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then leave and walk, and arrived at the Bani Amr bin Auf, and they were praying the Asr then that time. So if you think about it, 2 miles, 3.5 kilometers, someone walking very fast, maybe in half an hour, someone a bit slow, an hour, right? Still, like, there's a significant amount of time to walk 3 or ride an animal or to get there. And because someone who got there, they were praying the Asr, and the reason was that was a farming area. So they've heard the adhan. By the time they finish in the field, walk to their get cleaned up and so forth, come to the masjid. It took time to gather the community. They had their own masjid there. They used to pray there, right? So this shows you that there is a leeway. They were not doing something wrong, all right? They were not doing something wrong. It's just you have to, like for example, here we fix the Asr a bit later than the Asr. Asr is at 3 o'clock. We fix it at 3:30. Why? Because the high school students, they're praying up the road. Like they're coming from school. They finish 3:15. Give them a bit of time to join the Jamaat here. So these are factors. It's not like hard and fast on the dot has to be. So there's a flexibility with the other salat. The only salat that's got probably the least flexibility is Maghrib. Maghrib has got the least flexibility in time. And even that, we have some flexibility built into the calendar's got 5 minutes extra on it. So if people say they want to pray 2 rakat before, well, you can do that. You can pray actually before the adhan, because technically the Maghrib time has already started 5 minutes before the adhan on the calendar. Right? They put 5 minutes extra. If you look at the apps, why there's a discrepancy between the calendar, and for ihtiyat, to be cautious, they put 5 minutes extra. So if anybody comes in, it's Maghrib time already. You can pray 2 rakat before you sit down. Right? So anyway, so it shows you that, and Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam praying so early, because what's this based on? Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam leading salat, and then, let's say half an hour to 1 hour later, other people, Bani Amr bin Auf, they're praying their Asr, but it shows you Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was very strict or particular at praying early, as opposed to delaying. That he used to pray early. Imam Malik narrated from Ibn Shihab that Anas ibn Malik radiallahu narrated that we used to pray Asr, then we used to go to Quba, Masjid Quba, and we used to be there, and the sun was very high up still. Imam Malik narrated that from his uncle Abu Suhail bin Malik, who narrated from his father Malik, that he said that we used to see Tinfasa or Tanfasa of Aqil bin Abi Talib. Aqil was the older brother of Ali bin Abi Talib. So if I remember correctly, Aqil was 10 years older than Ja'far bin Abi Talib, and Ja'far bin Abi Talib was 10 years older than Ali bin Abi Talib. These are brothers, sons of Abu Talib. On the day of Jummah, so we used to see that his prayer mat or his rug or that he had, that he used to be at the end, at the wall, at the end of the western wall of the mosque had his carpet. Remember, the masjid of Rasulullah itself was bare. It was bare, dirt, or maybe there was straw mat on it. I can't remember now, top of my head. So he said that Umar radiallahu anhu, so he used to put it there, and then Umar radiallahu anhu used to start his Jummah when the shade of the wall had come, covered his whole prayer mat. Now, if you think about a prayer mat or a mat or a piece of carpet that one person has brought for himself, that means that there is a certain declination. So it's a western wall, right? It's eastern wall, Gharbi, western, western wall. Yeah. So decline. So that means the sun is setting to the west. So the sun is behind the wall. So the shadow of the wall is falling on the carpet. So there was a certain amount of declination. Umar radiallahu anhu used to wait, and the sun used to cool down a little bit, or that intense heat of the right midday sort of like declined a little bit. And the way they not, because they don't have clocks like we have, they used to observe the shadows, and that's how they used to know the times. So he said that his carpet the shadow used to be covered, like he used to cover the whole carpet, and then Umar radiallahu anhu he used to come out for the Jummah, for Salat al-Jummah and for khutbah and so forth. And then after that, we used to leave after Jummah, and then he used to have a qaylula. Have a qaylula, naqilul qa'ila. We used to have a siesta, a nap after Jummah. We used to have a qaylula. Imam Malik, who narrated from Amr bin Yahya al-Mazini, from Ibn Abi Sulayt, that Uthman bin Affan radiallahu anhu used to pray Jummah in Medina, and we used to pray Jummah with Uthman radiallahu anhu. Then we prayed Asr at a place called Malal. Now Malal, the exact place, different measurements have been given, but about 17 to about 20 miles. So that would be about 35 kilometers away. So Asr was prayed 35 kilometers away. So that means that between Jummah and Asr, that we used to pray Jummah in Masjid Nabawi, then travel 35 kilometers, maybe a bit more than that, and pray Asr there. And Yahya said that Imam Malik said that between it there was 22 miles, others say 17 miles. Imam Malik also noted that Shah Waliullah's, the Imams of that time are writing this, Yahya and so forth. There's actually a difference in the miles, English miles and Persian miles, farsakh as well. There's difference between the parsang, and then there's the Arab farsakh is different, and the Persian farsakh. So I'm assuming that this is the Arab one. And there'll be slight difference, but they're very close to each other. They're not too much different. So Imam Malik said this was because of the how quick they travel, how fast they travel, to leave early, and also to They travel even that tells you they actually travel quite a bit one day without cars, on camels and walking. They can cover significant distance. I said, Shah Waliullah said, I say that the stars, this was mentioned in the previous narration we did, actually we did the second one today, that the stars, meaning that all the stars are showing. So at Fajr time, the Fajr was prayed so early that all the stars can be seen. And Tahjir, which was mentioned in the previous narration, Imam Malik said that also that traveling while in the heat of the sun, and which is midday. So that means like even though they prayed Jummah, it was still considered the middle of the day. They prayed Jummah so early and so quickly. Because if you finish, like if you actually just do the minimum of Jummah, and we did it right in the early time, 12:10, we can finish everything by 12:30. It's still we still consider that noon, midday. Like it's not considered late. So to travel at that time, so they traveled at that time. Shauli also furthermore mentions in this chapter there are two things that need to be mentioned. One is that according to Imam Shafi rahmatullah alayhi and Imam Hanifa's students, Imam Muhammad and Imam Abu Yusuf, and that in terms of the beginning, Salat should always be prayed at the beginning, the early time. Imam Hanifa differed, rahmatullah alayhi, differed from them that in everything agreed, but except in Asr time. And they said that, I mentioned this last week, that Salat al-Asr should be prayed when the shadow is, whatever is at midday, plus once of the object. And for Imam Hanifa said no, when it's double, and based on the narrations that I mentioned last week. And also Imam Hanifa had the view, he differed from all the other Imams in that the red twilight, it's not just the red twilight disappearing after Maghrib for Salat al-Isha to start, it's also the white twilight disappearing, meaning the whiteness in the horizon, not just the red. The Shafi'i is also, like if you see in the books, they talk about the red twilight, the yellow twilight and the white twilight. They divide the time after Maghrib into three. Maghrib time ends when the red disappears. Although there are some Shafi'i Imams who are of the view that Maghrib time is only the time to make wudu. If you go to the bathroom, make wudu, pray 3 rakat fard, 2 rakat sunnah, iqam azan. It's about 15 minutes. Although the fatwa of the Shafi'i is not on this. The fatwa is on when the red disappears. And so anyway, Maghrib should be prayed as early as possible. So this is time for Isha. When the start of Isha is when the red disappears. Everybody agrees, except Imam Hanifa rahimahullah said also the white should disappear, meaning he makes it later. So another point that Imam Shah Waliullah summarized in this discussion, the preferred time for Salat according to Imam Shafi'i is to pray right at the beginning of the time, except for Isha, and it can be extended up to the third of the night, and except for Dhuhr, in this severe heat, it can be prayed later. Right? So, but the condition should be that it should be done for the sake of cooling down. Like it should be, so this is the heat of the sun, not just for any reason you make the Zuhr late. Imam Hanifa rahimahullah said that for Fajr it should be delayed until there's some brightness in the sky. So it should be brighter in the sky, and there's narrations for that. And Asr should be later, and Isha as well. Asr and Isha and Zuhr for summer can be prayed later. It being mustahab to cool the Dhuhr down in the days of winter, days of summer, sorry. Imam Malik narrated from Zayd bin Aslam, that narrated from Ata bin Yasar, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that indeed the heat of the sun is like the exhalation, breathing out of Jahannam. So when it becomes severely hot, cool the Salat, meaning delay in the Salat. And the fire of Jahannam complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the fire complained to Allah, and he said, "Oh my Rabb, some of me consumes or eats the other parts of me." So Allah permitted the two breaths, or two exhalations every year, one in winter and one in summer. Imam Malik narrated from Abdullah bin Yazid, the freed slave Asr bin Sufyan, who narrated from Abu Salamah ibn Abdurrahman, and who narrated from Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman, Min Thawban, who narrated from Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the heat of this like the weather becomes intense, then cool the salat, cool it for salat. Because indeed the severity of the heat is from the exhalation of Jahannam, and said that the fire complained, same sort of narration, complained to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah allowed it 2 exhalation or 2 breaths a year, one in winter and one in summer. Imam Shafi rahimahullah said that also the cooling can be if the masjid is calling over the Imam from a distance. They're calling the Imam from a distance. Imam Ahmad said that this is regardless. All of summer, it should be prayed late, regardless of where the Imam's coming from or where the people are coming from. And so, and this seems to be more, Imam Baghawi says that this seems to be more conducive to ittiba', meaning ittiba' of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because he's given this order. Like the Imam Ahmad's qawl is open-ended. There's no condition of where the Imam is, where the people are. It's open-ended. That in summer, the Zuhr should be prayed later. The ends of the time, just the last few narrations for tonight. The last, when should the latest the Salat should be prayed? Remember, Salat, other than Maghrib, which also has a range up to the Maghrib time starts. The agreed upon view is the Maghrib is from Maghrib after sunset till Isha time. Zuhr is till Asr time. Fajr is till sunrise. Isha is till the third or half the night, right? And Asr has a 2 shadow, 1 shadow or 2 shadows. So there's a range. Each Salat has a range. Although we've read just before that it's encouraged that we should pray Salat at its earliest time. So that's the first thing. That's a priority. But what are the end times? So Imam Malik narrated from Zayd bin Aslam, who narrated from Ya'ta bin Yasar, that he said that a man came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He asked him about the times of Fajr. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained silent until the next day. He prayed Fajr at the earliest time when the Fajr time started. Then he prayed the next day after that, he prayed Fajr until it was bright in the sky. There was a light in the sky. It brightened up. And then he said, where is the questioner of the timing of Salat? When he came, he said, Ha ana ya Rasulullah, here I am, O Messenger of Allah. He said, between these 2 times. So his answer came over like 3 days. He said, this is bayna ahaadeeth. He didn't answer instantly. He said, between these 2 times. Meaning this is the range of Fajr. Imam Malik narrated from Abu Zinad, narrated from, this is also shows that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam hikmat amali, practically showed, not just to him but to all the Muslims, because Sahaba used to wait. They had too much haiba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to ask everything. And they were told not to ask excessive questions. But they used to wait for the outsiders to come. And the Bedouin especially, and they wouldn't hold back. They would just ask anything and everything. And you see the questions that they asked, they were very direct and very forthcoming. So Sahaba used to wait for them to ask. They were excused. Sahaba don't live with Rasulullah, and if you're constantly asking questions all the time, so they will stop from excessive questions, unnecessary. And their questions are mentioned even in the Quran. When they did ask the question, they asked very intelligent and extremely important questions that we benefit from, the answers of which we benefit from today. So Imam Malik narrated from Zinad, he narrated from who narrated from Abu Hurairah, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, when the heat is intense, then cool the Salat, meaning delay the Salat, pray it in a cooler time, because the severity of the heat is from the exhalation of Jahannam. Imam Malik narrated from Nafi' that Umar radiallahu anhu, he wrote to his governors, right? And he said, or the people that he had appointed in various government, positions, pray your dhuhr when the shadow is a zira', one zira'. Zira' is a cubit. It's from the tip of the fingers till the elbow. That's a cubit. So pray your dhuhr when the shadow is this long, up to when the shadow of you is one length, like meaning right up to the one shadow length time. Interesting, the instructions that have been given by the Khalifa to his governors. We are watching today, not talk about politics, but what type of instructions the rulers are giving to their workers. But he's telling them, his workers and the government workers, that when to pray their dhuhr, make sure that you do your dhuhr like this and at this time. I mean, he was meticulous in every aspect of deen. Government didn't make them forget about the most essential things, because if we don't get that right, the other stuff is not going to be right if we're not fulfilling the obligations of deen. Imam Malik narrated from Rabi'a, the son of Abi Abdurrahman, who narrated from Qasim bin Muhammad, that he said that I found the people, referring to Sahaba radiallahu anhu, that they used to pray the dhuhr they used to pray dhuhr at a time when it used to lose its intensity. They wouldn't pray dhuhr at right on noon, referring to Sahaba radiallahu anhu. Technically, as dhuhr zawal, when it's right at midday, that time dhuhr is entered. But he said, I found a people, meaning Sahaba, who used to delay in the dhuhr because the instruction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that delay in a time. There's a range, but the preferred time is to delay it especially in summer, is to delay it to let the intensity of heat lessen. And the last narration from tonight, Imam Malik narrated from Ala bin Abdurrahman, that he said that we entered upon in the gathering of Anas bin Malik after dhuhr, and he stood up and and he prayed Asr. When he prayed, when he was free from Salat, then we told him about praying Salat early. Then he said that I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying, this is we said to him about that you've prayed Salat. We reminded Salat was very early. You prayed Asr very early, and he said, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, basically they're saying you should have prayed it later, and he said that is a Salat of Munafiqeen, that is a Salat of Munafiqeen, that is a Salat of the Munafiqeen, the hypocrites. Someone sits until the sun becomes very yellow, then he prays between the two horns of shaitan, and then he just does like naqara, like a chicken, hits the ground 4 times, and he doesn't remember Allah except for a little, because that's a description of munafiqeen. So then they leave it to the last minute, they just quickly rush, they hit the ground like a chicken, and naqara arba'an la yadhkura, and he doesn't remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, pecks the ground, and then he doesn't remember Allah except for a little. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from such a salat. Meaning that he was emphasizing on how we should be praying as early as opposed to later. Because what's the reason for praying late? The work that I'm engaged in is more important than salat. That's pretty much what it boils down to. But in reality, if you prayed salat, whatever work that we'll do, Allah put barakah in it. We think that the work that we're going to do, we're going to finish this thing and we're going to do all this stuff, then we're going to pray salat. But the reality is, if you do the salat, that thing will have barakah and blessing. Those things will be easy. It's not to hinder us. Salat is not, it's actually to make our life easier and better for us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and tawfiq to practice what we're saying here. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallah bihamdika. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun. Wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.